Hi and welcome. Thank you all for joining us in today's very special interview with the one and only Dr. Ken Berry. Dr. Berry, hi and welcome.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. It's good to
Abs-
talk to you.
Absolutely. Can you share very briefly a little bit about your background? Although I'm sure most people know you very well, but for anybody who's coming across this video for the first time.
Sure. So I'm a family physician, an MD. I was classically trained in allopathic medicine at a state university, and I've been practicing family medicine for over 20 years now.
Wonderful. And you are one of the earliest adopters of the carnivore diet. There's really not a lot of doctors in this community.
Yeah,
So, can you share a little bit about how you came to find carnivore and what it has done for you personally first?
sure. So I was morbidly obese. That's what we called it back then. Now we call it severely obese. I weighed 297 pounds, and I'm 6'3" and I was pre-diabetic, and I was miserable. I had joint pain, I had dandruff, I had severe reflux. I had just chronically pissed off about everything in the world. Not a formal anxiety disorder or any of that, but just chronic frustration with everything in my life because I was miserable. I was this doctor who was supposed to help other people with their health, and I couldn't fix my own health. And so, in on the journey to try to figure out what the hell's wrong with me and reverse my prediabetes before I became a type 2 diabetic and to try to get some of this weight off, I started reading widely in nutrition, both in the classical literature, but also in the kind of the popular books at the time. So I read Atkins' Diet Revolution. I read Primal Blueprint by Mark Sisson. I read The Paleo Diet by Lauren Cordain. And all those made a lot of sense to me. And so I started to really cut the carbohydrates out of my diet. And it was when I got below probably 50 total grams a day that I started to lose weight, lose fat, and started to reverse my type 2 diabetes. I had to cut it down to 20 total grams after I stalled out for a while, and that restarted the fat loss and improved my A1C even more. And then, so keto helped my severe heartburn. I used to take 2 Nexium every day for my heartburn, and it got 80% better on keto. And I kept seeing this a friend of mine now, but then I didn't know who he was, Sean Baker, talking about this carnivore diet, and I just issued a challenge on my Facebook page, and I said, hey, let's do a month of this carnivore thing because that's as low carb as you can possibly get, right? And at the end of that month, I noticed that I'd lost 4 or 5 more pounds, where I thought I had reached what I was going to get, and my heartburn was gone.
Wow.
And which, for anybody who's ever suffered with severe reflux heartburn pain, that's a little bit miraculous to not have to take anything for heartburn. And so I thought, well, I'm going to do this for another month. And I kept tacking on months, and now I'm like 3.5 years, going on 4 years carnivore, and I've yet to find a reason that I need to add plants back into my diet. And I'm an open-minded, all-inclusive carnivore. If people want to eat some plants, I don't believe that plants are trying to kill you. I do believe plants are trying to defend themselves and defend their seeds. That's 100% true, but I don't think they're out to kill you. And I think many people can tolerate certain plants in pretty large amounts and do just great. But every time I try to experiment and add plants back in, I start to get abdominal bloating, I start to gain fat, and I start to just not feel as good as I currently feel on a carnivore diet. And so I cut them back out. And every now and then I'll try that experiment, just think, well, maybe it was coincidental. But then the scale starts to tell me exactly what's going on, and the belt that I've been wearing for a few years starts to tell me what's going on, and I have to go back to carnivore.
Wow. Yeah. Me too. Exact thing. Like I said, sometimes we try to go back and add a little bit extra plant foods just to see. And yeah, you always regret it. And for me, it's like aches and pains, especially because I work out so much, which brings me to my second question. Are you working out? What's your personal experience with that?
So I don't work out in a gym with weight equipment. I have a 40-acre farm here in Midwestern Tennessee, and so I work out on the farm, just basically doing farmer and rancher chores. And I just find ways to make them harder instead of easier. And most farmers look at me like, what's wrong with you? Why are you making that harder than it has to be? But I do, that's just my built-in workout so that I don't have to go to the gym, which with my ADHD, although it's much better on a carnivore diet, it drives me a little bit crazy to just contemplate spending an hour moving weights around.
Yeah. So I had no idea you lived on a farm. So
Yeah.
what kind of stuff do you do on the farm?
So we lived in Nashville for a year, and then the virus, which
Yeah.
shall not be named, hit.
No, please
And
don't.
yeah, and we, just watching the way society, especially high density societies, cities and suburban and urban areas, was reacting to that. Nisha inherited a farm from her grandfather who went to heaven. And so we were like, you know what? Let's get the heck out of the city. Let's go back to the country. And so 40 acres, and currently we have sheep, we have turkey and chicken and quail and dogs and cats. And I'm contemplating getting a few head of cattle and maybe a couple of pigs to round everything out.
Wow. And for people who don't know, Nisha is your wife.
Yeah.
And so do you personally take care of all the animals?
Yes, yes. I am the lone rancher on the farm. Sometimes Nisha and Beckett come out and visit the animals, but they don't do much animal care. So I'm in charge of the animals. And when you set your system up right, it's not that hard. It's not that much work. I have to go out of my way to make it more work than it actually is.
And outside of the responsibilities of the farm, how are your days structured? Are you seeing clients and patients every day?
So I've got a very small number of patients who I still see. The vast majority of them are shut-ins who can't get out to go to a doctor, who I've been taking care of for, in some cases 20 years. And rather than make them find a new doctor, I just take care of them at home for free when they need me. And I've got a few other patients who I take care of. And I'm currently very happy with that. I'm not accepting new patients because all my mornings are filled with research.
Yeah.
Researching not only nutrition and medicine, but also archaeology, paleoanthropology, because many of the things that we in the carnivore community have found to be true in our personal life, when you start really digging into archaeology, but even more importantly, paleoanthropology, you find out that human beings have been super carnivores for over 2.5 million years. And so when you discover that kind of research, and in paleoanthropological communities of PhD researchers, that's considered self-evident that we're super carnivores. That's not even up for debate. And so about 12,000 years ago, something catastrophic happened, and we were no longer able to have access to these humongous fatty animals that we had hunted for millions of years. And so we didn't get to, it wasn't like it was an innovation or a discovery. We had to start farming plants, grains and beans and stuff like that, because we didn't have access to the megafauna. So we had to do that or we'd starve to death.
Via your research, were you able to figure out the most probable cause of extinction of the megafauna and those large mammals that we ate?
It might have been one discrete event. It might have been several events. Definitely global climate change and temperature change played a role in that. But there are several respected researchers who think there was a catastrophic event like a meteor or a volcanic eruption, perhaps all those things combined, that basically led to the hastening extinction of many of the megafauna. And a lot of people don't realize that even in North America, before 15,000 years ago, there were camels, there were horses, there were multiple species of bison and buffalo, there were armadillo the size of Volkswagens. Like there's all these huge megafauna just roaming around, eating the grass and eating the vegetation. And in many cases, it didn't take a lot of brain work on our part to hunt them through endurance hunting until they were exhausted, because animals like that, they can't run at full speed while they're panting. And so if they don't have sweat glands, which we're blessed with, then they have to stop at some point to catch their breath, and then we're right there to dispatch them and put them over the fire.
Wow. Yeah. Armadillos the size of a Volkswagen. That's
Yeah.
news to me. I
Yep.
love it.
Yep. And that was in North America, and a lot of people think the Spanish brought horses to America, but they repopulated the Americas with horses. The horses were here long before the Spanish.
Wow. Cool stuff. Yeah, I think paleo, just having a basic understanding of the paleoanthropology fundamentally shifts your perspective on nutrition. And this idea that what is it? The guy who's going to come up with the new dietary guidelines, the frosted flakes are supposed to be healthier
Right.
than meat and eggs.
Yeah. The food compass guidelines
Right.
from tough school of nutrition, and so all these people who advocate a plant-based diet, they are people need to understand they are earnest, they're honest, they believe what they're saying. They're not trying to trick you. Now they may have investments in plant-based companies, and they may stand to gain financially from that, but I don't think this is some big conspiracy. Most doctors get very little training in human nutrition, right? We're all aware of that, but they get zero training in archaeology and paleoanthropology. And I found my nutrition, kind of my global circumspect understanding of nutrition, very deficient until I discovered the paleopathology and paleoanthropology and that huge volume of research literature. And when I started delving into that, it became quickly apparent that we are super carnivores. The majority of our diet each and every day needs to be fatty meat and eggs with the yolk. That's what we basically became Homo sapiens sapien eating. That's what gave us access to the omega-3 fatty acids like DHA and EPA, not ALA, because many of us are very poor converters of ALA into DHA, and you can't grow an optimal human brain without access to DHA, both while the mother, before she's pregnant, while she's breastfeeding, and then when the child is an infant, is young. If they don't have adequate sources of DHA in that entire span, you're going to wind up with someone with a lower IQ who's just not as quick of a thinker as if that baby had access to DHA their entire existence, even before they were born.
Which brings me to the omega-3 question. Should people be eating things like salmon or organ meats like brain to get their DHA?
Yeah, so humans have to have DHA in our diet. It is essential. And some of us can convert ALA, which is alpha linoleic acid that is found in plants and in nuts and some other plant foods. We can convert that if we're eating pounds of that food a day. We can convert enough of that into DHA and EPA to limp by, but it's known in physiological research that many humans are very poor converters of ALA into EPA and DHA. And so with that knowledge, then you can tell somebody, well, I guess you can eat 5 pounds of greens a day and 2 pounds of nuts a day with all of the carbs that come with that, and all of the anti-nutrients, all the lectins and phytates and oxalates, and all the inflammation they potentially cause. Or you can just eat the yolks of eggs that are pastured. You can definitely get it from seafood. That's probably the richest source. But many animal sources, including organ meats, the brain, the liver, spleen, and others, along with the yolks of pastured eggs, you're going to get plenty of DHA.
Where are you getting your DHA from? And also, what does your typical day look like in terms of food?
So I get probably the majority of the DHA I get is from cod liver, not cod liver oil. Oh. But I love to eat cod liver. I enjoy the taste, and also sardines with the bones in and the skin on. Then pastured egg yolks. We have about 30 hens running around in the backyard eating bugs and worms and seeds and turning that into nutritious egg yolks for us. And then as far as my diet, I typically get up and I'll have a morning cup of coffee with some pastured butter in it. And after maybe 1 or 2 of those, I go get started in doing my farm chores, and sometimes that won't stop until 4, 5, or 6 p.m. And that's typically when I break my fast, and and some days I'll eat 1 meal a day, and it's typically 2.5 pounds ground beef, a can or two of cod liver, or a can or two of sardines, and I may eat a second time depending on the family situation and what's going on, what's available, or if I'm not feeling hungry, that's it. That'll be my 1 meal a day. And let's talk about seafood for just a second, because there's quite a bit of evidence that at least certain tribes of humans would be geographically trapped where there was no megafauna, and so they made very large advantage with seafood. And at several archaeological digs, they found these huge mounds of mussel shells or oyster shells, and for a long time they thought that was some kind of religious monument or something. And then they finally figured out, no, they were just eating the hell out of mollusks and crustaceans, and they were piling the shells up. And so that was basically a huge garbage pile of mussel shells and oyster shells, where we were eating them in such quantity. Obviously humans, before the invention of rods and reels and fishing hooks, we were excellent fishermen, either with spears or other strategies. And then anything that we could wade out and trap or harvest, we ate the hell out of that. So I think there may be subpopulations within the human species currently who would do better with a seafood-based carnivore diet, or a seafood-based keto diet, or even just a seafood-based low-carb diet. I think some of us might do better with that, whereas others of us would do better with a more ruminant-based, land-based mammal diet.
I love it. Yeah, because sometimes some people will tell me like I just can't eat meat, and every time I eat meat, I feel like it just sits there, and we're trying to fix the digestion, and all that kind of stuff. But maybe at some point, if you try all those steps and they don't work, then maybe just, you know what, you might need more seafood based.
100%. And I tweeted the other day, fish equals meat, for those of you who are confused. Anything that swims, creeps, crawls, flies, runs, slithers, all that stuff is game on a carnivore diet. And indeed, there are many vegetarians in the world who, for ethical or religious reasons, limit the amount of meat. They don't want to eat ruminant meat for whatever reason. And I think that they can get almost everything they need from seafood if they eat a varied variety of seafood, and then egg yolks, and then plus or minus some butter and ghee or some cheese. I think you can probably eat 100 total grams of carbs a day, depending on your genetics and depending on your gut microbiome, and you might do just fine. And I love to always ask carnivores to please don't be basically anti-vegans. Don't act like that. There are many, many things that we currently don't know when it comes to human nutrition. Let's all keep an open mind. If somebody wants to experiment with something, I love that. I love it when somebody says, you know what, I'm not feeling great on this, that, or the other. I'm going to try this. 100% do a 30-day or a 90-day trial of that, because I don't propose that I know everything, not even close. But I do know what works personally best for me, at least so far. I may find out something tomorrow that I didn't know. But all of us need to find where we fall on the proper human diet spectrum, where we experience our best health at this moment in time. And that's where you need to stick. And for many of us, that's carnivore. Some of us, that's ketovore. Some that's keto. Some it's low carb with lots of healthy animal fat and protein. Whatever works best for you, I'm 100% for that, because as a doctor, my goal for you is optimal health. That's what I want you to have. And I'm not in any way advocating it's either this way or the highway. Let's all keep experimenting.
Yeah.
And I was just having a conversation with some plant-based people on Twitter this morning. I call it a conversation. They may use another adjective, but it's like, I want to know how you feel. I want to know the truth. Don't try to convince me. I want to know how you really feel on the diet you're eating.
And what was the result of the conversation?
Well, it didn't end well. It seems that I don't know why they get so emotionally involved in the argument. I understand that many people eat a vegan diet for ethical reasons or religious reasons, but nutrition is science. Nutrition is physiology. Either you're eating all of the nutrients that you need,
Yeah.
or you're not, and you're having to take a handful of supplements every day if you even hope to achieve optimal health. And in my mind, if you're trying to say that your diet is the proper human diet, but you have to take 12 supplements a day, that seems like that weakens your argument to me.
So do you recommend people include organ meats on a regular basis?
Well, maybe not a regular basis, but I think we all should experiment with organs. I think we should all try them. For example, liver. There are a large assortment of livers that you can try. And so the liver from an adult cow is very livery, very coppery, very metallic. I mean, it has a distinct taste, and some people abhor that taste. And I understand. I can eat it, but I don't love it by any means. But now, if you make chicken liver using Nisha's chicken nugget recipe that has a carnivore breading of pork panko and Parmesan cheese, if you cook chicken livers like that, I can eat a bunch of chicken liver, right? And the same cod liver packed in its own oil is very mild and is just a literal superfood multivitamin and mineral. And I can eat that all day. I don't have any problem with that. But, and so sheep's liver is very mild. I can eat that and I actually enjoy it. But beef liver, it's not very enjoyable to me personally, although some people love it. I've had sheep's brain raw, actually, on a beach in Puerto Rico. A gentleman brought some, and I'm like, yeah, I'll try it. And it was delicious. Getting access to sheep's brains requires some dexterity. And I haven't done that yet here on the farm. I may do that in the future. But I think that our ancestors, it's pretty clear, were big fans of organ meats. And not only did they eat them to keep from starving to death, they ate them because they actually enjoyed them. I just printed off some pages from a cookbook back in the 1940s that had about 10 pages of organ recipes. And so even back in the early 1910s, 20s, and 30s, if you looked at a restaurant menu, it was full of organ meat and different ways to cook it. People at home cooked organs routinely. Up until the 60s, it was pretty much considered mandatory to have liver and onions at least once a week. And I think the once a week guideline, that probably is a pretty darn good thumbnail rule to have organ meats of some kind. And I think there are definitely carnivores who haven't touched an organ meat in 20 years. They look like they're doing great, but I'm not convinced that all of us can eat just the muscle meat and fat of mammals and do fine without including organs once a week, once a month. And so my mind is still open on that, although people get very dogmatic about that. Yes, you do, or no, you don't. And sometimes there's, the selling of a supplement involved in that argument. And so I say if you find an organ that you can eat and enjoy and have it once a week, it's not a big deal. That way, out of an abundance of caution, if there is something that you're missing in your muscle and fat diet, you're going to get it from that once a week organ meat.
I'm curious to know how you eat the cod liver. Do you cook them, or I've never tried that?
So there's multiple ways to cook it. And I have a patron on my Patreon who is from Norway. And so he loves cod liver, and he's given me all these recipes about how to cook it. But so cod liver is very smushy. And so what I do is I dump it out into a bowl. I put a lot of zero carb mustard on it. And then I just basically smush that up so it turns out to be a very thick mustard. And I usually put that on my ground beef or my steak. And so the cod liver becomes a condiment. And when you mix it with mustard or any kind of vinegar base, I can't taste the liver at all. And so I can effortlessly eat a whole can of cod liver and not even know it's in the mustard.
Yeah, that's something that I've always wanted to seriously start taking because I've always struggled with acne. And I know that, vitamin A is so high in it. And I know there are a lot of people who think that vitamin A is too toxic. You know, I think it's more about vitamin D and A being both high. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I know a lot of people, or a few people in the carnivore community, have expressed some concern about vitamin A toxicity. And so, what I always do when anybody talks about toxicity, I look at the case study literature. And so, when you look on PubMed.gov, which any human with a computer can search and research, and I look for vitamin A toxicity, I find it in supplements, definitely. There's multiple case reports of someone who was taking too much vitamin A as a supplement. I find polar bear toxicity reported in the historical literature. If you eat too much polar bear liver, you definitely will develop vitamin A toxicity. But I cannot find a single study, a single case report of anyone developing vitamin A toxicity from eating beef's liver, sheep's liver, goat's liver, chicken liver, cod liver. It's just not in the literature. And for many doctors who want to get published, the easiest way to get published is to have a case in your office and go, oh my God, this guy was eating 5 pounds of beef liver a day and he developed vitamin A toxicity. I'm going to write that up and I'm going to submit it to a journal. So you don't have to be a bench researcher to get a case report published. And there's not a single case report of beef liver vitamin A toxicity or any other ruminant animal, chicken, goose, liver, duck, cod liver, any other fish liver, except now there are a couple of fish that people eat in Japan that their livers are very toxic, and so you shouldn't eat those. So currently I tell people, if you're not eating polar bear liver or the toxic liver of these two fish, I think you're pretty safe, because there would be a case report if someone had eaten too much chicken liver or beef liver and developed vitamin A toxicity, and such a case report does not currently exist.
Yeah, I agree, and that makes sense given that vitamin A and vitamin D work in tandem. So it might be that you're taking synthetic forms of vitamin A and you're already deficient in vitamin D, so it's just magnifying this effect, right? I also
Exactly.
found, an article on cod liver oil because it's so popular. And what the researchers were saying is that the newer formulations of cod liver oil, for whatever reason, it seems that the vitamin D is being lost. And so like the ratio of both is not optimal anymore. And that could be the cause why people might be having issues with cod liver oil. So you have to be very careful which brands you're taking if you want to take the oil.
Yeah. And I actually used to try to take cod liver oil back when I was paleo, and I freaking hate it. So full disclosure, I hate cod liver oil, but all the research I've done on it, even from very reputable companies who I trust them in other areas, cod liver oil, if it's put in a plastic or a glass bottle, or even a metal canister, is going to be at least to some degree oxidized and rancid by the time you put it in your mouth. And I can tell you from personal experience, the cod liver that I buy is packed in cod liver oil. And that cod liver that comes straight from the fishery is put in a metal can, so no white, and it's not heated at all. That cod liver I love that. It's very mild. I can mix it and I can drink it. It's fine. But the cod liver oil you buy and keep in your refrigerator, oh, it's not, it's rough.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So there's that with regards to the, vitamin A toxicity and just organ meats in general. I think you'd be the perfect person to ask this question too, which is children on a carnivore diet. You just had a newborn. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Are you sleeping?
Yeah, she actually is a pretty good baby. Now, Beckett, on the other hand, was not a good baby. He's two and three quarters now. And but Bonnie she's a very good baby. She very often will sleep through the night at 7 weeks of age.
Wow.
And Nisha tanks her up with the good booby milk, and she's out for the count. Now, every now and then she wakes up, but I had to get up regularly with Beckett and walk him around and do all the things. But so far, Bonnie's been a good baby. But Beckett, he's 2.5, 2 3/4 now, and his first bite of solid food was when he was about 4 or 5 months old. He had a tooth, and he was reaching out and grabbing food and trying to put it in his mouth. And so I was eating beef ribs, and I'd cleaned off a beef rib, probably 95%, a few little remnants left, and he wanted it, so I just handed it to him. And he proceeded to clean that beef rib of all the connective tissue, the cartilage, any remaining meat. He cleaned it so thoroughly that when he dropped it, our dog, a little Yorkie poo, didn't even want the bone. It's like, well, there's nothing left. You already ate it all. And so that was his first solid food was beef. And so he routinely eats bacon and sausage, and he loves steak. We recently had the county fair, Carnival, come to town. They come once a year. And out of all the crap there, he ate the guts out of a Philly steak and cheese sandwich. And he didn't even ask for the cotton candy. He didn't ask for any of the junk. He's like, oh, they have steak. Yeah, I'll have that.
Wow.
And so he's a ketovore. Every now and then he'll have some avocado or an olive or some fruit or berries or something. But the vast majority of his food is beef and pork. That's his jam.
And for how long was he breastfed?
He was breastfed for a year and a half.
What is your recommendation for breastfeeding in general?
So obviously, living in modern society with busy schedules, I understand, and there's no judgment on my part what moms do, but please try to breastfeed your child for at least 12 solid months if you can. It looks like from the archaeological and anthropological literature that humans probably breastfed exclusively for somewhere between 3 and 5 years. Is what it looks like in the literature, and obviously that could change with a new discovery, but at least 12 months. And then also, every mom who's going to breastfeed, understand that you are making the breast milk. If you're eating a diet that's deficient in iodine or vitamin D or vitamin A or any of the other essential things, then you're not going to have that in your breast milk. And I helped design Keto Chow's daily mineral drops. And minerals are a huge thing. And so minerals are an element, right? They're on the periodic table of the elements. You cannot create them. So if you're eating a diet that is deficient in them, then the mom's going to be deficient. When she makes that breast milk, no magic happens. It's all physiology. If the iodine's not in your diet, it will not be in your breast milk. If the vitamin D is not in your diet, it will not be in your breast milk. So you have to really take your diet deadly serious. If you're going to grow a human in your body and then breastfeed that human, your diet cannot be a joke. You have to really know what you're doing. And I'm not advocating, that you need a PhD in nutrition before you breastfeed. I'm just saying you need to at least read a couple of books about what foods you should be eating. And hint, plant foods don't really play a role in the vast majority of the vitamins and minerals that you need to be giving your baby.
Exactly. Not any books, because unfortunately 99% of the books on nutrition are so off. You do have a book, right?
Yeah, well, I have 2 out now. So I have the original that's been out for 2 or 3 years called Lies My Doctor Told Me, Medical Myths That Can Harm Your Health. And that's available at all bookstores. If they don't have it in stock, they can order it. There's also an Audible for people with ADHD who have to be doing something else while they read a book. There's also an Audible. And then also I just released Common Sense Labs, which is it's a small book, but so many people don't know what labs to ask their doctor for. They know their doctor's not ordering the right labs because they're sick and miserable. And it basically helps you understand what labs to ask your doctor for in order to fully tease out what's wrong with your metabolism. Do you have an undiagnosed thyroid condition? Do you have an undiagnosed adrenal problem? Do you have low sex hormones? Only if your doctor checks those labs will you know. Otherwise, both you and your doctor are blind to what's going on, and your doctor winds up thinking that you're just depressed and gives you some Prozac or something. And so we talk about the labs you need to ask for, and also how to ask for them, because sometimes docs will just flat out refuse. Like, I'm not ordering that. I wouldn't even know what to do with the results. And so we have an answer for that in the book. It's like, here, doctor, this is why it matters. Also, we included the ICD-10 codes so the doctor could bill for it properly, so insurance might actually pay for the labs. And then we talk about the normal range, but also we talk more importantly about what's not the normal, but what's optimal. Where's that narrow range that you really want to be in for this lab or the other? And you can find that at commonsenselabsbook.com. There's a paperback, and there's also an electronic edition. If some of your viewers are in other continents and they don't want to pay the shipping, there's an e-version of the book.
And I'm assuming Amazon too?
No, it's not on Amazon yet. We're just selling it from the website right now, okay, until further notice. And I'll send you a link to that, Sarah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Berry. I know how busy you are, so thank you for taking the time to speak to my audience. I guess before I ask you to share how people can connect with you, what are your goals in the next 5 to 10 years?
So my goals in the next 5 to 10 years, Nisha and I were just talking about this, is I'm working on a book right now called The Proper Human Diet. And I've got that, the first draft is done. And now the real work begins. And if you don't know, writing a book is a special kind of torture for somebody with ADHD, to just have to sit down and focus on one thing. It drives me a little batty, but hey, I'll get there. I would love to get my YouTube channel. I currently got 2 million and change subs. I'd love to get that up to 10 million within the next 5 to 10 years, just to help more people, to reach more people who are currently suffering. And they don't realize there's a simple answer for this. If you will just stop trying to fix it with pharmaceuticals, and let's look at your diet, let's look at your lifestyle, let's look at your sleep. Very often, things like depression, you don't need a prescription. You just need to change the following things, and it'll just get better. We would love to expand the farm. Within 10 years, I'd love to have 2,000 or 3,000 head of sheep running around, 100 head of cattle, 50 hogs getting fat. I'd love to scale this up to where we'd be able to feed our neighbors and our friends and people from other counties from this farm. But whether that happens or not, I'm okay either way, but that'd be awesome.
That's amazing. Do you have any advice for the YouTube part? Because you really have blown up. First of all, how many years have you been doing YouTube?
About 4 years now, I think.
That's pretty quick to reach 2.23 or something million.
Yeah. And so basically my strategy for YouTube is to talk about something that I thoroughly understand, that I thoroughly researched, that I've talked to actual patients face to face about before, and then sit down and just make a video like I'm talking to a patient who's asked me the question, well, I mean, what are vitamin D rich foods? Where can I get vitamin D in my diet? Because I don't want to take a supplement. And so then I just go through, this is where you find vitamin D rich foods. And then I always try to list the research links that I use to make the videos down in the show notes. So if anybody's like, well, okay, I hear what you're saying, but I've got more questions. How can I look deeper into this? Well, here's the research that you can actually look into this yourself. Because I don't want people to blindly believe what I say. I want them to verify this and look it up and do their own research. And I think that people love that it empowers them to not only know, oh, I don't have to take a pharmaceutical. I don't have to take a supplement. I can just eat these foods 2 or 3 times a week, and I'll have plenty of vitamin D or plenty of iodine or plenty of this, that, or the other. And then also just calling out the obvious bullshit that the average doctor tells patients, sometimes thoughtlessly, but sometimes they really believe it's true. And you can kind of hear the echo of that in the title of my book, right? Lies My Doctor Told Me. But doctors have a fiduciary responsibility to their patients. You either should know what you're talking about, or you should shut the hell up and say, I don't know. I have no idea. I'll send you to a specialist. That's what doctors really should do. But so often, especially when it comes to nutrition, doctors will flap their gums and wind up giving a patient just ignorant advice that doesn't help at all. And so the patient is at home doing all this busy work, because that's what it turns out to be. It's not helping their health at all. Like, a common recommendation is, oh, you need to drink your body's weight in pounds in ounces of water every day. You need to drink lots of water. Push the water. That's somehow magically really good for your health. Well, when you actually look into that recommendation, it's idiotic. There's no research that supports drinking 3 liters or 2 gallons or however much water a day. Basically, what human beings should do is if you're thirsty, drink. If you're not thirsty, don't drink. It's that simple. You're going to get a lot of water from the food you eat every day. Then if you're out on the farm working and sweating like a horse, drink some extra water. If you're not, don't worry about it. And so, but you can just imagine millions of people at home with their big jug of water. They lug with them everywhere because their doctor said to drink 250 ounces of water a day. And by God, they're going to do that because their doctor wouldn't mislead them. And this is just one of many examples where their doctor did unknowingly mislead them. And they're spending how much of their motivation and energy every day lugging that huge jug of water around. And that's not helping a thing. That's literally not helping them in any single way. And so by the time they do get to something that they really should focus on, they're exhausted. They don't have the motivation. They spent $45 on this expensive, sexy, Instagrammable water jug, and now they don't have the money that they should be spending on real high quality food. It just goes on and on and on. And so I try to really point out, hey, actually your doctor's wrong about that. And here's the truth, and here's the research that supports what I say.
And you don't have any other YouTube channel? I notice a lot of people, when their YouTube channel grows, they'll start another YouTube channel for like just podcasts or just, let's say, workouts or something like that. You put everything in one channel?
I do when it comes to medical and nutrition advice. Now, we do have another YouTube channel called OB Farms, which stands for Oxford Berry, where we kind of document what we're doing on the farm, the sheep, the chickens, the kid, Beckett out running around trying to catch a chicken, that kind of stuff, just to kind of document and chronicle what mistakes I make on this farm so that other people don't have to make those mistakes. Nisha has a channel and she does more lifestyle, fashion, and then also everything that we eat. So if anybody really wants to see what I eat in a day, what we feed Beckett, what Nisha eats in a day, then her handle is just Nisha. If you go to YouTube and type in Nisha, Nisha, her channel is the #1 thing that pops up, and she's got lots of videos about her Hashimoto's journey. She's a labor and delivery nurse, and now she's a certified lactation consultant. And so she and I both are on fire for breastfeeding and for an ancestrally appropriate childbirth and raising your children the way they should be raised, not only from a nutrition standpoint, but just a lifestyle standpoint, so that they get everything that they need. Because I fear that the next 20 to 50 years of human existence on this planet is going to be somewhat trying for a number of reasons. And so we really need to be building the strongest, smartest, most resilient children that we can to populate that world.
And are you talking about the war on meat, global warming?
There's multiple things that I'm keeping an eye on currently that are happening at different parts of the world, economically, financially, demographically, lots of politically. I do way more research than any one human being should do on so many different topics. Don't forget, I have ADHD, so I can't just stick to one thing. But there are many things in the world that worry me right now, that we've become overextended in this area or that area. And anytime you overextend, at some point, you're going to have to truncate. And when that happens, that typically hurts. And it typically hurts for a while, especially if you're talking about at the nationwide level. We're going to have to cut back on this or that or the other, or this is not going to be available for a long damn time. Get used to it. And so that's another reason we moved out of the city and back to the country, is so that, we don't have to depend on the electricity being on to store meat in the freezer. We've got meat stored in the pasture.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I'm also obsessed with those kinds of topics, and like the movie.
I think we all should be. I think we all should pay attention.
Yeah, yeah. And like we have a stash of food, and like for apocalypse and the apocalyptic movies and like the Instagrams. I think there's an Instagram called My Patriot Supply that like it's very alarming, but I love to be over prepared than under prepared.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if anybody faults you for being prepared, I mean, even the federal government says you should have 2 weeks of food and water stored in case there's a huge power outage or an ice storm or a tornado or a hurricane down in Florida. I mean, you're basically an idiot living a grasshopper's life if you don't have at least 2 weeks of food and water stored. So
Yeah.
anybody who starts to talk about, oh, you're a prepper, I just unfollow them because that's foolishness. You're not a mature adult if you're not prepared for multiple scenarios.
No, I agree. I mean, just watching the news for half an hour and you really understand quickly how important that is. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Dr. Berry. Do you need to plug anything that we haven't mentioned? We talked about the books, your YouTube channels, Instagram. I'm going to link them all in the description box below.
Yeah, I'm also on Facebook. I have a Facebook page, and I'm also on Twitter. If anybody wants to fight the nutrition wars with me and stand by my side as we fight, Twitter's the place to do it. If you want to be, more loving and accepting than Instagram, Facebook. If you want more informational, then check out my YouTube channel and the books that I've written so far. But I have the most fun on Twitter, having the Twitter wars with vegans and plant-based people and people who think that the end is coming. So
meat is murder.
Meat is murder, yeah. And I'm trying my damnedest to educate these people, but they seem to be pretty hard-headed.
No, it's only when their health unfortunately breaks down. That's when they really start remembering those conversations. So
Yep,
yeah.
I agree.
Awesome. I'm going to link all those links in the description box below for everyone to connect with you and find them easily. Thank you so much, Dr. Berry, and thank you all for joining us. And if you enjoyed this kind of content, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and hit that little notification button so YouTube will alert you every time I post a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one.
Thank you.